Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to This or That. This is a fun series I like to do when I'm ready to cull my collection just a little bit. And what I like to do in this is sort of pair up decks that I feel like might be sliding into a very similar niche and choose one to stay and one to go, ideally. Sometimes I will choose to keep both. Sometimes I will choose to declutter both. Most of the time, one stays and one goes, and that is what we're going to be doing today. I have a larger selection of decks than usual to go through, so I'm going to get started because there is a lot to cover here. Hopefully, I can make some good decisions today. I guess we will see. So, let's get into our very first pairing. Okay, our first pairing is between two modern-ish feel Oracle decks. So I have two decks here that I tend to reach for when I want to pair with an Oracle deck with a more modern feel or a more, I guess, diverse kind of feeling with a modern, relatable kind of deck. So the two decks that I have in this category is the Awakened Soul Oracle deck by Ethany and the Believe in Your Own Magic Oracle deck by Amanda Lovelace. So I have the little guidebook here just so we can kind of take a look at these. Okay, so to be completely fair, I have had the Awakened Soul Oracle for a lot longer. In fact, this is the second version of this deck I had. But one thing that I realized recently is that I haven't been reaching for either of these decks, and sometimes I find that when I'm not reaching for multiple decks in a single category, it's because I have too much in that category. It kind of sounds counterintuitive, but sometimes if I feel like I have more than I need in a particular area, I don't reach for anything. It's almost like overwhelm. I don't know if that happens to anybody else. It definitely happens to me. So these are both beautiful decks. The Awakened Soul Oracle, I don't know. I feel like this was a deck that I worked with a lot at a certain time, and then I just stopped reaching for it. And there's absolutely no reason. I think there's some really stunning, wonderful cards in here. I think it's a very well done deck, and I really enjoy it. But I find most often when I want to reach for an Oracle deck with this kind of a feel, I've been tending to reach for this one. So the Believe in Your Own Magic Oracle deck. So this one is an independent deck, again, created by Ethany. The Believe in Your Own Magic Oracle deck is this, oh, it's Andrews McMeel Publishing. My deck, as you can see, is a bit bowed, which is fine. That just happens sometimes. But what I love about this is it's got this very like body positive feeling to it. And I don't really have anything else in my collection that does this. I will say Ethany's deck also has some good body diversity in it. But there's something really wonderful about this particular deck. I have heard some, I think, fair criticism that this deck does tend to be a little bit on the young side. But there's so much sass and beauty and power in it. I really enjoy it. And I also find it pairs really well with just any modern deck. One of the things I found with decks like this, I love this card. One of the things I found with decks like this is that they do tend to be very female-centric or feminine presenting-centric. And this deck is definitely one of those. In fact, I don't think there's any boys or masculine presenting figures in this deck. Oh, there's a shark. Oh, but that's a shark, so it's a bad man. We don't want just bad men in our decks. This is a criticism. Sometimes I find the female-centric decks, when there's males, they're only like in a negative like light. But I do really like this deck, so maybe that's something I need to think about. Let's take a look here at this one and see, because I think this one had the same thing going on. We do have a little bit of gender mix-up there, which is good. But actually, maybe this isn't even the right deck to be comparing this one to, because I have another deck, I realized, because this one, yeah, it's still almost entirely, I love this family card, it's so sweet. This one also, almost entirely female or feminine presenting, same kind of issue, so that's definitely a thing. I definitely cannot have, okay, I shouldn't say cannot. I would prefer not to have multiple decks that are so feminine-centric if they are in the same category. So like in this case, modern relatable, both very feminine heavy. I realize the deck that I have that probably does a better job with gender mix-ups, but it's still kind of got that bit of a modern feel, is the Threadbound Oracle. So let's just take a look at this in between, because I keep forgetting about this deck, and I wonder if that's part of why. So this one, when there's people in it, see, there we have a more masculine looking figure. There's a lot other stuff happening in this deck, but it's not super people-y. Like there's definitely lots of people in it. When there's people, it's very blended, which I really like. There's a definite mix of ages and people. Yeah, see, I feel like I would reach for this one more if it wasn't also competing with these other two. And I feel like, so I do feel like I need to trim this category down just a little bit. So I think I'm going to do that. So I think what I'm feeling right now, my sort of gut feeling about this, is that I have this one, which, by the way, this is just a beautiful deck by the same creator as the Numinous Tarot, Cedar McLeod. I'm definitely keeping this one. This is just an absolute treasure. I do think I'm going to keep Believe in Your Own Magic because this is the only deck that heavily features larger bodied people, which I appreciate. I do wish there was multiple genders in here, but I do find this to be a really lovely, powerful deck. So I'm going to keep this one. And I think I'm going to put my Awakened Soul Oracle into Purgatory. Now, again, this is a beautiful deck. It's really well done. I just haven't been reaching for it for a while. So I think that one's going to go into my Purgatory drawer. This one was just for the example, so I don't want to count that. But this one's going to be a probably rehome, and this one is going to be hung back up on my shelf. So that is a keep. So that's a 1 and 1. So we're off to a good start. Okay, so the next one, these ones, I was really struggling. One of these, just going into this particular pair, we have these are both decks by Colette Baron Reid. We have the Postcards from Spirit and the Enchanted Map. This is the newer printing. Now, this has been living on my shelf for a while, and I have maybe done one pull from it. It's a really great deck. They all look like postcards, and they literally have this like really encouraging... Oh, is this a... Oh, that's the book. There's a... I don't think I realized there was a pamphlet with it. But anyways, they're all these really encouraging notes or letters, postcards, obviously, from Spirit. And they're really encouraging. They're really lovely. But I never use this deck. Never. I think for me what happened with this one is that I had a really touching experience with this deck during a 3 Fat Readers collab chat. And it was really great. I feel like this is the kind of thing that would be really lovely to literally tuck in the actual mail, which would be cool. But I don't see myself using this. Maybe what I'll do, okay, so since I'm already talking about it, I feel like I already know that this is the one that I'm not getting any use out of. But let me take a look at the Enchanted Map, because I haven't used this one in a long time either. And that partly started, or seemed to start, when I replaced my old copy. Oh, there we go, get my hands down in a frame. When I replaced my old copy of this with this newer printing, I think in my head when I ordered this, I thought it was going to be matte. There are some changes to this new version that I really like, but it remains pretty much untouched. That said, I really like these cards, and I think because I've gotten to know them and I really enjoy the artwork. I like Jenna De La Grottaglia's artwork, and she partners with Colette Baron Reid on a lot of things. But this is one of the first, I think this is the first Colette Baron Reid deck I ever owned, and there's something about it I really enjoy, and they did make some changes in this edition that I truly appreciate. So yeah, I don't feel like this is going anywhere. I don't reach for it a ton. This is to me, like a very classic Oracle deck. Someday I'd like to read the book that accompanies, that prompted this deck. There's a book called The Map by Colette Baron Reid. But then again, I'm a little worried that it might taint my view of the deck because I can be a lot pickier in some ways. I love that card so much, about this kind of Oracle deck. But I actually don't have a ton of mass market Oracles that I still reach for in my collection because I've gotten spoiled by some indie decks, and this is a good one. So I do think I want to hold on to it. I'm glad I took a look at it. I do have another one as well, the Wisdom of the Oracle, that I also love. But I don't think my time with this deck is quite done yet. So I will be keeping the Enchanted Map. And I think I'm going to rehome, or at least Purgatory, the Postcards from Spirit. And it's worth mentioning now that I don't typically let go of anything right away. When I'm ready, I will typically list it in my Supportive Tarot Facebook group in the Tarot Trade Tuesday thread. So if you're in the Supportive Tarot Facebook group, you can always keep an eye out there for decks that I may be rehoming. But for now, I'm going to just breathe through it. We'll see where I end up. Okay, let's talk about our next pairing. So this is hopefully going to be an easy one. I have 2 of these little mini decks. Now, they don't strictly fall into the same category because they're very, very different. But I found that decks like this tend to just not get used in my collection very much. I have rehomed one in the past. It was the Whispering Woods deck. This one was an impulse buy that I had previously anti-hauled and brought in anyways. This one, I don't remember how I first found out about this one. I think I mentioned it in whatever video I first got it. I am ever on the quest for a chakra deck that will just scratch my itch for chakra decks. This one is really great. I would like to edge these cards according to their chakras because I do have client work that I do around chakras, and it would be nice if I had a chakra deck to go along with it. Now, I have used this in that client reading before, but I like to separate into the individual chakras and then pull a card for each one. The issue with that with a deck of this size is that there's just not a lot, but I have found that I'm just curious how many of each category there are. So I think I've found all of the solar plexus. I'm just checking. Okay, so I found all of the solar plexus and there are 5. So this to me is a little light. I would like at least 7 to 10 cards for each chakra. If I'm honest, this is cute. And it does have, the backings are actually the associated crystals. So it's kind of a crystal deck and a chakra deck kind of combined. I don't know. I don't think I'm quite ready to let it go because it is adorable and I do a lot of chakra work. So part of me is like tempted to kind of hold on to it for now because I don't have a lot of chakra things in my collection. Maybe I'm going to... But I have other things maybe I would reach for if this wasn't so convenient. You know what? I think I am going to let this go. It just kind of sits on my shelf getting ignored. And the reality is that I'm so picky about chakra things. You guys know this. I think I'm going to let this go. I was going to compare them, but I think I think I need to make the decision on these ones independently. The Forest Fae, I'm really torn. This one is so dang cute. And I love the way that they go this direction. They do feel like a little mini deck. I don't know, something about them not going horizontal I really enjoy. They all have the same back, so it's not one of those with different backs. But I found that some of these characters speak to me and others don't. And I felt like when I used this, I wish I had used something else. Like, this has a lot of really great Fae energy, but so does my Brian Froud Fairies Oracle. And maybe if I didn't have this, I would reach for my Brian Froud deck more, where I feel like there's a lot more depth. This is a great little deck. I paired it with the Forest of Enchantment Tarot, and it does go really adorably next to that deck. But I think I've used it like just the one time paired with Forest of Enchantment. And other than that, every time I've pulled it out to play with it, I've kind of half regretted it, which I think is a pretty good sign that this one needs to go. So I think both of these little mini decks are going to go. I just don't think that they are serving me in my collection. And I feel like there's things I would use more. Like in place of this one, I would use my Brian Froud Fairies Oracle, which I can show you really quickly just so you have an idea. But this one, it's this deck, right? This has all that Fae energy, but it's got like a really nice big guidebook. There's so many places you can take this deck. It's got a ton of depth. So I feel like I'd reach for this one instead. And with my Chakra Love deck, I definitely feel like I would reach for my Color Mage Oracle even more than that, and have actually. I've edged the sides of the cards to align with the chakras so that I can pull out the individual stack. This is hard to get now. It may be out of print, I'm not entirely sure, but I have done a lot of work with this deck. It seems like it'd be really flat, but I've actually had some really profound work I've done with this deck. So I do enjoy this one. It's a lot of fun and it's super unique in my collection. So I don't think I need the Chakra Love or the Forest Fae. That was easy. I feel like that was easier than it should have been. Okay, next up, let's look at my next pairing. So I have 2 mini oracles that we're going to talk about, and I'm actually going to grab a 3rd mini oracle because these are actually the only oracles that I own that I would classify as minis. So first of all, this one is not leaving my collection, this first one. The Roots and Wings mini oracle. This is such a treasure. I love the Roots and Wings full size. And this is the mini. I love this deck. It is everything I want in a mini oracle. And actually, because I have this, I don't really reach for either of these. Or I don't think I will. No. I haven't really used this a whole lot yet because I don't typically use a lot of mini oracle decks, but I feel like these have been neglected for a really long time. So let me look at both of them and decide if I want them both. Okay, let's talk about this one first. So this is a Curious Oracle, and I've had this kind of like thing that's happened with this deck where I bought it in person at the Northwest Tarot Symposium from the creator of the deck, and it came with this digital sheet that you could download, or maybe it came with this printed, I can't remember. And this kind of describes the system, and it's actually a really cool system. There's a set of cards for body, motion, intuition, heart, mind, blessings, and spirit. It's quite a comprehensive system, and then you've also got, for each of these sections, there's a step. So there's a manifest step, a relationship step, a growth step, a structure step, I can't see what that says. Some kind of challenge step, and 5, a healing step, and an epiphany step. The numerology of that is really, really cool. There is a digital guidebook that exists, and the seller, the creator of this deck has and does sell the digital guidebook for it, occasionally through Etsy, but there's been this weird timing thing where, I'm just looking at this, there's been this weird timing thing where every time I go to pick up the guidebook, the digital guidebook, her shop's been on vacation mode or something's been going on and I haven't been able to get it. And it's kind of bothered me. Okay, so if I take the steps and the sections out of it, if I ignore the numbers on this, we have Phoenix Rebirth, the Cock Luck, Mudra, Experience, what does that say? I have no idea what that says. That's not great. Expression. Oh my gosh. It's expression. Mudra expression. That makes sense. The Jewel, Riches, Echo, Reflection, Crowned Heart, Love. I love the artwork in this deck. It's so colorful and beautiful. But Spider, Wisdom, Ouroboros, Eternity, the Sun, Recognition, the Anchor, Stability, Deception. I look at this and I like want to work with it more, and it's really sweet. I don't. Prayer Wheel, Meditation, Journey, Beauty, Wound. I want to work with this more. I don't know. Now I'm torn. Orange Grove, Fidelity, Memento Mori. I love that card. Honeybee, Child Spirit, Potential. Okay, let me think for a second. I also have one other, I guess, kind of mini deck. These are all actually around the same size. Let me just pull them out and take a look, because I think this is something else, since I haven't really been thinking of it as, of these decks specifically, as the fact that they are all mini. So this is my Roots and Wings, which is obviously not going anywhere. This is the Curious Oracle. I also have, and I think it's probably around the same size. Oh, I've got 2 more. Let's take a look at those and just kind of see what I think about all of them, which I know is a departure from this or that, but we're going to do it anyway. So I also have my Earthbound Oracle, which is a nice size. And I also have my Seeds of Shakti Oracle. Oh, this one's in like the plain bag that it came in, which is also, I think this is the same size as the Earthbound Oracle. This video has taken a little bit of a detour, but that's okay. We're going to get back on track. And then this is the other one that I was considering whether or not I need. And it is the adorable Inner Compass Oracle. I almost called it the Curious Oracle. That's this one. The Inner Compass Oracle has this really great layered collage thing going on. So, in truth, I was really looking at these two as ones that I'm considering whether or not I need to keep them. When I'm looking at all of these on the table, here's what I'm thinking. These 3, I feel... okay. These 2... Let's start here. These 2, I feel like both are kind of made in a way where they can be really expansive. But in truth, as adorable as this particular deck is and as cute as it is, and I've gotten a lot of use out of this deck, I don't really reach for this. I feel like this one and my time are probably done. I think this one I could probably put in purgatory for a bit, I think. Okay, let me think about this for a second. The Curious Oracle, man, this one, I just feel like it has a ton of depth. But again, if I'm not using it, okay. I think this one, I wish this bottom keyword was just a little bit easier to read. Yeah, this was number 98 of 100 of this particular printing. I got it in 2018. Gosh. It is really pretty. And the cardstock on this is really, it's really nice. But again, I don't think I've ever really used it that much. Like, I think I've maybe used it twice. It's a great little deck. Okay, it's really pretty. I just enjoy looking at it, but in truth, I don't think I'm going to work with it. So I'm going to put this in the, oh my gosh, both of them? What am I doing? Okay, but these three all have very unique energy. So this is the Roots and Wings is the kind of oracle deck that I feel like I can pair with almost anything. Like, it just goes beautifully next to just about anything. I can do entire readings with it. It's got an abundance of cards. It's a great deck. And again, I have 2 copies of this because I have the full size as well. So the Roots and Wings is definitely one that I plan to keep around. The Earthbound Oracle is another one that I find really expansive. And also, I feel like this matches up with lots and lots of decks. It's very intuitive to me. The cards, like, they just jump out at me with what they mean. I feel like I don't have any trouble at all. So the Earthbound Oracle is definitely staying in my collection as well. Whew, I feel like I totally ended up doing like a 5-way here. Okay, so this one and this one are definitely going to be staying. And then we have the Seeds of Shakti. This was on my wish list for ages. I love this deck because not only does it have these wonderful associations that really harken to all the time I've spent in a yoga practice over the years, and a lot of these are really, really familiar to me through that lens. But also, I really appreciate that there are these titles like Hanuman, and then you have Unwavering Devotion. Now, if you know anything about Hanuman, that goes a lot deeper. It's a lot richer. But if you don't, you still got that key phrase to kind of lean into. Shiva, Chai, Monsoon, Lotus. I just love this deck. And I love the bright colors. Every action has a reaction. Yeah, I feel like I would use this deck a lot more if I wasn't competing with these other mini, like, smaller oracle decks. So I'm definitely keeping this one as well. And this one also has a lovely little guidebook. So keeping the Seeds of Shakti Oracle. Whew, okay, we're making progress, guys. Okay, the next one is another multi-category one. So we're going to talk about the Sacred Self-Care Oracle, the Self-Love Oracle by Janet Cui, and the I'm Here, this is just a little prototype deck. This is a deck that was on Kickstarter that I received a prototype to share with all of you guys. I haven't gotten my full copy of the deck yet, but I'm very excited for it. It'll be in a different cardstock, different box, all that kind of thing. So the reason I pulled all these three together is because there's a specific reading that I offer. It's a self-care chakra reading. And one of the parts of that reading is I like to pull a single card that gives kind of a bit of self-care homework. And I've tended to lean into this deck for that. But I've often found it feels just a little bit lacking because this deck focuses on very tangible, like, activities you can do. And while I do work with this deck intuitively, so if I get a card like Connect with Crystals, I might say this is one thing you could do, but this could also mean blah, blah, blah. I feel like I have to kind of force it to work in a way. It's beautiful, and I've gotten some wonderful messages for clients with this deck, but I often feel like it's just a little too literal. Like, it just feels like it could be more expansive, I guess is the best way to say it. And I feel like I'm limited. But it's the only one I kept thinking of because I had this one. There's a certain section in my deck storage where I had this, where I always thought, oh, this is the one I use with that reading. But a deck that I've been neglecting for a long time is this Self-Love Oracle by Janet Cui. Now this is a very, very early printing of this deck. I've had it for a long time. I bought it direct from the creator a long time ago. I think she was in the Philippines, and it's really just beautiful. I'm pretty sure you can still get it. I don't know that it looks exactly the same as this copy, but it's called the Self-Love Oracle, but when I look at the messages and the themes of these cards, it has some really wonderful self-care messages because self-love, self-care, it's all kind of in the same umbrella. And there are even cards that go landscape in this deck, and I continue to love it. And I think I could actually use this deck in my client readings for my self-care homework. I think it would slot really beautifully into that space. And because it's got keywords like co-create or mourn or listen to feedback or patience, I feel like I can still give that sort of self-care homework with this deck. And I feel like it would actually get a lot more play if I worked it into my collection or into my rotation of work in that same way. And I just think this would work really well there. So I feel like I definitely want to keep this deck, and I want to incorporate it into the same sorts of spaces that I would use my Sacred Self-Care Oracle. And I think because that's what I want to do, I want to not lean too heavily into this deck. This has served me really well, don't get me wrong. But again, it can be very literal, and I don't feel like I need it. I feel like it's been fun to play with and work with, but I think I'd like to let this one go and keep the Self-Love Oracle and reach for it when I'm doing those particular readings. So I'm going to keep this one. And the reason I have I'm here is because this is the other deck that I plan to incorporate as self-care homework with my clients. Because this is very much a self-care focused deck, but it's its focus has a tendency to be much more about internal self-care, so not so much the tangible activities. And in fact, this one will probably become my go-to for those readings. I haven't done it yet. I probably could. I've got this thing where when I have prototype decks, I tend to not reach for them a whole lot when I'm waiting for the full versions, but I feel like in this case, I shouldn't ignore this one because I feel like it could be really lovely for those client readings. And I feel like this art style also will blend really well with other decks that I tend to use in my self-care chakra readings because of all the colors. Yeah, so I feel like that's something that I want to work with. So I'm going to also slot my I'm Here deck into that same space. And maybe for now what I'll do, just so that I can think of that, is I will keep these two decks together so that when I pull them down to do this particular client reading, I've got both to choose from. Ooh, we're making good progress. Okay, the next one is more about, I think, a shift in my practice, and I kind of know which way this is probably going to go. So I want to talk about these two decks, and they're very, very different. So you might be like, what? So this one is the Angels and Ancestors Oracle. I have used the crap out of this deck. It's actually really wonderful. And the Portals of Presence by Deborah Cove Chopin, I have not been able to stop using since I started working with it. This deck, I feel weird even calling it a deck because it's massive. So funny how big this deck is. But it is, these are all like 4x6. They're postcard sized, if not a little bit bigger. They're photo print sized. They're huge. They're huge. But I've used, okay, let me back up. Let me see if I can kind of wrap my brain around what I'm trying to say. There's a very specific way that I've been using the Angels and Ancestors for years now. And that is, and you can tell, I like edged this myself in like an antiqued gold. And you can see how worn it is from my shuffling. It's so funny. Anyway, it looks really pretty edged like this, I think. I think it's got a really nice worn look. Okay, let me back up. So, the way that I use the Angels and Ancestors has been for the first 3 cards I pull in a past life reading. Now, I love doing past life readings for clients, and one of the things I really appreciated about this deck is that I could pull 3 cards to sort of begin the conversation with that past life, to kind of sort of lean into some context for that life. And it did well at that. I won't say that it did a bad job. It did an okay job. I've been using it. It was good. It was exactly what I needed when I needed it. But every once in a while I would pull some cards and I'd be like, oh, it felt like it stayed at this kind of superficial level. The other thing I really enjoyed doing with this deck was using it for kind of like a travel altar, but like seriously, who's traveling anymore? I really liked pulling out the, not the Magic Guardian necessarily, but I really liked pulling out the Elemental Guardians from this deck. So like the Water, the Air, the Earth, and the Fire Guardians. And I could lay them on the table literally to hold space instead of like colored candles or something. It'd be a great way to sort of cast a circle. But I haven't had a reason to do that in a very, very long time. And I find this deck has this really lovely sort of earthy feel. And it's wonderful if you want to sort of have a bit of a gateway into, I think, just toying with the idea of getting to know angel energy, but in a very unique and different way. And that's kind of what I feel like I did a little bit with this deck, but really, truly, mostly I relegated it to my past life readings. However, once I got Portals of Presence, that practice stopped on a dime. And not because it stopped working, but because this works so much better for the kind of past life work that I do. So this has stopped being reached for at all, as I exclusively reach for this deck, which needs a bag. I just haven't figured out what bag I want to put it in, because I think I want to put it in one of Peggy's wraps, and I don't think it fits. So she might have to custom make me one, because this thing is massive. Anyway, So instead of pulling 3 cards from the Angels and Ancestors, I now pull 3 cards from the Portals of Presence. And these cards, because there are no defined meanings, and because the bulk of my past life reading method uses the soul cards, which is by the same artist and also has no predefined meanings, it's more of a scrying process with these cards and with the soul cards together. And they play so beautifully together because, of course, they hold similar energies. And I feel similarly when I look at these as I do when I look at the soul cards. And because these are all faces, what's ended up happening is that my past life readings have evolved a little bit. And these often tell me about either players in that past life, or they tell me a little bit about relationship dynamics in that past life. I've gotten a lot from these. They literally do feel like portals, and it's the perfect way to kick off a past life reading in my experience. And because this has been such a powerful practice, it's the only thing I want to reach for those first 3 cards in my past life reading. Therefore, I'm not using this anymore, like at all. And so I feel like my time with this deck is done and I can let it go. This isn't going anywhere because I think it's incredible. But it was one of those situations where I had a deck for a very specific purpose, and this has turned out to be better for that purpose than the Angels and Ancestors. So Portals of Presence is staying. It just needs a special bag. So I'll be working on that. But there we go. Oh my gosh, look at me. I feel like I've done a good job making decisions. This is not normally my strong suit, you guys. Decisions are hard. Next, pairing. Ooh. Okay, I'm going to go here next. So these, I may have paired these in the past. I literally can't remember. But it's something that keeps coming up. So I have 2 decks that to me have a very similar kind of feel. I wouldn't say they have a similar energy, but they have a similar feel. One of these, so I have Rebecca Campbell's Work Your Light Oracle, and I have the Threads of Fate Oracle. I don't know if this is still available. This is by Blair Porter and Britt June, threadsoffate.com. I will have links to all the decks I've been talking about in the description box down below. So one of the things about this Rebecca Campbell deck is that it pairs so beautifully with the Moonchild and Starchild tarots because it is the same artist. However, that is literally where my bond with this deck has begun and ended, and there are There are cards in here that I like just legitimately don't like Pleiades. That means nothing to me. Birthing a New Age. This deck feels New Agey in a way that I don't love, but I've kind of put up with it because I feel like it's so beautiful with Starchild and Moonchild. And in fact, I think I talked about this in my Perfect Pairs video, which if I remember, I will link somewhere in the description box, that I did for Valentine's Day last year, I think. It is beautiful next to the Starchild and Moonchild, but the reality is, so is this one. So we're going to talk about that. They do have very different feels because this is very light and bright, and it is the exact same artist, which will always have a certain amount of, I guess, sway. But the Threads of Fate Oracle, this is the, oh gosh, this is called a Shadow Edition. There was all these different versions of these decks, which can get confusing if you're trying to pick one up. But I think this was called the Shadow or I can't remember. It was called something. Anyway, these decks are so beautiful, and they have this gorgeous gold detailing on them. And these also look incredible next to the Starchild or Moonchild. And I find that the keywords are really expansive, and I get a lot from it, and it doesn't clutter up the reading with noise. It kind of, and I think this is something I've come to appreciate. There are definitely some pairings where I want kind of a busier or noisier deck, so to speak, like you know what I mean by noisier, paired with something simpler. And that's where I feel like this works really well with Starchild and Moonchild. It's not just a sea of all the exact same energy. It feels like they're playing off one another, neither one is sort of dominating the other. There are just some absolutely stunning cards in here, and I really enjoy working with this one, but I think I forget about it a lot because I'm constantly reaching for this one because it feels like it's like the perfect pair. But actually this is really good. And of the 2 decks, I far prefer this one, but I kind of get in my own head about which one I should use, and this is what I mean by that kind of overwhelm that happens if I have too many things kind of slotting into a similar sort of space. I love this deck, and I've enjoyed this deck, but I feel like I enjoyed it because of the aesthetics, not because the deck itself really hit home for me. So I feel like that one can go, and this one can stay. I guess I should keep it. No, it doesn't matter. I can put it back in its bag. Okay. So I've got 2 more pairings. Here's the first one. Oh, I'm really zoomed in, sorry. Okay, so these are both astrology decks. I have the Astro Soul Oracle deck. Look at that pair. It's the best. Sometimes this is why I don't let things go, because I have these like perfect bag pairings and I just can't. Will it ever be this good again? No. And this is an OG Peggy bag. I've had this bag forever. This was before she started doing decorative stitching, and she had these other kind of cords that I don't like as well, but I can restring it. That's not the point. The point is it's a good match. Anyway, the deck it's up against is the Heavenly Bodies astrology deck, which also has a lovely back match. So like, I don't need to be all sad about it. Anyway, here's the deal. The Astro Soul is a aesthetically beautiful deck that for me has no substance. Not because the deck has no substance. I want to be very clear. This is a really well done deck and it's an excellent tool for learning astrology. I've really struggled with astrology decks though, if I'm being completely fair, because this is how a lot of them are structured. They're either really beautiful and they have the planets and the signs, like this one has all the signs in it. What's neat about this is that it's got the signs, it has the aspects, it has things like retrograde, vertex, it's got asteroids, more aspects, eclipses, I forget what Lilith is she, I can't remember, void of course, houses, planets. This is probably still in some kind of order of the last time I laid out or tried to lay out my birth chart. It's a whole lot. But what attracted me to this deck initially is that I thought that a lot of the cards had these keywords on them, like the houses have like a bit of information about what that house is about. There was a time when I was so overwhelmed by astrology that I wanted those keywords so that I felt like a deck would help me learn. But I found instead that I just didn't really ever know what to do with these cards. I used the moon cards for a bit to just kind of sit out and be on display for whatever moon phase it was currently. I did that with the previous astrology deck that I also had and loved for the same kind of reasons, but also ultimately didn't use for the same kind of reasons. And that's about the only thing I've ever really figured out how to do with a deck like this, because the guidebook is, I feel like it's designed to help you kind of learn astrology, which is, it's great. It really is. It tells you a lot about astrology. There's a lot of information in here, but I just don't think this was the way that I was meant to learn astrology. And because it feels like a study deck, it doesn't inspire me to like pull it out and play with it. And that's what I've really struggled with. But this is aesthetically beautiful. The quality of this deck is gorgeous. I don't know if this version is still available, if they've changed it, if they've updated it. I have no idea, but this is my copy. But then this deck hit the market, the Heavenly Bodies astrology deck, and this deck just blew me away. This is by Lily Ashwell. The book that goes with this deck is incredible. The system of these cards is really, really well done. You still get keywords, but you have keywords on the houses. You also have, am I just in the houses here? Yeah, pretty much. You have keywords on the signs, whereas this one only had keywords on the houses, didn't have them on the signs. Keywords on the signs. You have keywords on the aspects, which is amazing. Square, trine, keywords, love it. You have keywords on the planets, Earth, Mars. That's another aspect. So this one, there is not a single card in the entire deck that doesn't have keywords on it. But more than that, this functions as something that teaches me in a different way. It's interactive because I can literally go to a part of my chart and go, okay, let's say I have Jupiter in Leo in the 6th house. And these things will form, these cards will form a bit of a story that I can use to learn about that. So it says Jupiter, grow and expand. And is in Leo, which is self-confidence, loyalty, and creativity. So my self-confidence, loyalty, and creativity will grow and expand. And it's in the 6th house, which is all about foundation, health, daily life, and practical details. So now I understand right away what Jupiter and Leo in the 6th house could mean. And this is something that none of the other astrology decks I've ever played with have done for me without me having to dig really deep into accompanying guidebooks. And that has made this such a treasure for me learning astrology that I can't think of another astrology deck I want to work with more than this. It has all the main planets that I want, all the main aspects that I want. It doesn't have everything because of course that would be a much chunkier deck such as this one, but it has all the main things that I feel like I would want or need in a deck like this. It's beautifully produced. Again, the guidebook is hardbound. It's lovely that comes with it. So I feel like when it comes to astrology, and this actually makes, I've got one other astrology deck that I should probably mention because it kind of slips into this category as well. And I could see the heavenly bodies replacing this also, but not yet because I feel like there's a lot in here. But the other one that I have is the Oracle of a Radiant Sun, which has a card for different combinations of planets in signs, but it has, as far as I know, only the 7 traditional planets. So Mercury in Aries, the Sun in Scorpio, Venus in Virgo, etc., right? All the way through. The art style of this, I don't really reach for this, to be completely honest, but I find it really interesting. And when I have used it for readings, it's felt very predictive based on how it works. I don't know. I don't think I'm ready to let this deck go yet. But I think it's worth talking about in this category because this is the only astrology-based deck that I still have in my collection other than these 2 here. But man, me and this deck went on such a journey, and I don't know. I feel like it has probably some more to offer me still, and it can be really fun pairing this next to decks that have an older feel, like older Marseille decks, or this would go really well with Danny's Mystic Masters. There's other decks so this has just kind of got a unique aesthetic that I feel like would pair well with some things. So I'm going to keep this one still. I guess it ended up in my pile of things to be discussed. I'm going to let the Astra Soul go, or at least put it into purgatory for now, and I'm going to be keeping the Heavenly Bodies astrology deck. Oh boy, we're doing good work here today, guys. And I have one last pairing. Okay, so the first of these is a throwback from a previous This or That, where I discussed the Elemental Power Tarot and how I absolutely love the majors. And I like the minors too, but I find that because I have other pip decks that I like better, I wasn't reaching for this to work with the minor arcana. I really just wanted to work with the majors. The majors, and especially the way they're written in the guidebook, they have such a beautiful narrative style, and this artwork is really great. It's very intuitive, but I love that you're invited into the environment of each major arcana card. I think that's really, really unique. But I'm not inspired. There's nothing about this. Like I want to be more inspired. It has a muted color palette, which we all know, and I don't use majors only decks very often. So I don't want multiple majors only decks in my collection. So these are really the only 2 I have, if you don't count the art cards that came with the Cosmovisions Oracle. So I think it's time for me to let the Elemental Power Tarot in its entirety go. I have the Minor Arcana already in my Purgatory drawer, and I think I need to put the kit together and find the entire thing a new home because I'm just not using it. I will definitely find another purpose for this gorgeous embroidered Elemental Peggy bag that I have though. So that's not going anywhere. This one I think I'm going to keep for now. It's got a really unique perspective and point of view, and I love that about this. So this is Roxy's Sideways Tarot, and it's pretty great. I feel like if I was going to pull out a Major Arcana deck to do any kind of work with, readings or journal work or whatnot, it would be this one. It goes sideways. This was created during the pandemic, and it's just really great. There's a ton of symbology. I love all the vivid colors. And it's like these are your hands, so you're in it. It's just as immersive in a way as the Elemental Power, but in a completely different way. So you're the one working with each of these energies, you're in Temperance, you're in the Hierophant card, you're in the Lover's card. But there's also more than that in this deck. There's a ton of symbology. There's runes that feature throughout. I just find this to be a really cool deck and unlike anything else I've ever seen. And I think that inspires me more to want to find a way to work with it or play with it, in spite of the fact that I don't tend to reach for majors only decks. But I feel like if I was going to, this is such a wonderful one because it really pulls you right into the energy of each archetype in a way where I feel like I would actually get something pretty meaningful out of the experience. I do need to give this one a pouch, which I haven't yet, but it's in this kind of really neat sort of fold-in style box envelope type thing that's actually kind of neat. So I haven't put it into a bag, but I really should because it deserves one. I don't think it's going anywhere anytime soon. All right, and that is where we've ended up. So let's do a quick tally. I think I actually did pretty good. So I ended up pulling extra things in, so the numbers are going to be kind of weird, but I am keeping 12 decks are staying. Look at that satisfying pile. Isn't that great? Decks that are going. Now keep in mind again, these aren't going yet. They're going to go into purgatory and then we'll see. The Astra Soul Oracle deck, the Work Your Light Oracle cards, Angels and Ancestors, Sacred Self-Care Oracle, the Curious Oracle, the Inner Compass. I always forget the name of this one. The Inner Compass Oracle, the Chakra Love and Forest Fame mini decks, Postcards from Spirit, the Awakened Soul, let's just put that there, and the Elemental Power, finally, in its entirety, are all going to be going. Ish. They're going to go into purgatory. If while they're in purgatory, and so just to clarify, purgatory is just a drawer where I put decks that I'm pretty sure I'm going to be home. I'll put things in there, and if they stay in there for a while and I don't remember that they're there, I don't reach for them, I don't go, oh, I really want to do a reading with blah, I'm going to go dig it out. If I don't dig it out, it's not meant to come back into my collection, and it will then be listed in my Tarot Trade Tuesdays and Supportive Tarot Facebook group. As always, it's really fun for me to sort of look at my collection in this way and to kind of be really intentional about what I keep so that I reach and continue to reach for the things that I love and am working with. I hope this was helpful to you. I like doing these videos, and I do like to do this in my collection every once in a while, so keep an eye out on the channel for more this or that's. I will also link the playlist of all the this or that videos I've done in the past, so you can go take a look at those. And that is it for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. Don't forget to click the like button if you enjoyed this video or you found value in it. Subscribe if you're new here, and don't forget to click the little notification bell and turn on all notifications so you're notified of my future videos and live streams. Thank you all so much, and may your magic always shine from the inside out. Bye, guys.